Oh, hi, everybody. Welcome to Non-Duality Talk. I'm Jerry Katz. My guest is Gabor Harsanyi, who is right next to me on a video and speaking to us from Budapest, Hungary. And last week, I interviewed Gabor's wife, Norit, which was a great interview. So do you think you're going to top this interview? Do you think you're going to top Norit's interview, Harsanyi? And welcome, Gabor.
Thank you. And I don't think I'm going to top it.
That was good.
She's a lot more charismatic than I am.
So, Gabor, you're a spiritual coach, and on your website, Silent Roar GH, all one word, silentroargh.wordpress.com. You describe yourself as a spiritual coach who frees people from thought addiction, allowing consciousness to awaken and to become the real guide. And I don't know how much more I'm going to read, but I wanted to make sure I had that from your website. It was something Norit said last time. It stayed with me. She says you said a few words about you because you're her teacher. You know, she met you. She went through her story last time. You're her teacher, her guide. And she said something about Gabor. She said Gabor protects you from your mind. And I thought that was I never heard anyone describe what a teacher does in those words. I thought that was really powerful. What do you think of that?
Yes, it is. Well, that's, in my opinion, that's the main job of a real teacher, is to help a student, lack of a better word, go from consistent habitual thinking to non-thinking. Most of the teaching happens in a being state, not intellectually, unless a teacher can demonstrate the being state and speak from that perspective and help the student also speak from that perspective. Basically, the teaching is useless.
You're laughing. What's so funny about a useless teaching? Although, well, maybe that is funny, I guess.
What's funny is that I didn't think I'm gonna be starting with that.
Well, I think that it's just that it's been on my mind is what I think it's important to key in on, because I've read a lot of this stuff, talked to a lot of people, and that kind of phrasing of a teacher protecting your mind I never heard of, so I wanted to get to it right away. Why not get to the kind of end right away? I know you have a story.
Yeah, I mean, you don't fool around. You go right to the bottom line, Jerry.
I fool around. There's no one to fool around with. I'm trying to find someone to fool around with.
I'm glad to hear it.
Maybe that's all we're doing is fooling around, in some sense.
Yeah, exactly. Cannot take life so seriously.
I don't know.
Some of the so-called spiritual teachings can happen on the intellectual level, on the explanation level. It's a perfectly fine way to learn anything by accumulating being different, by emphasizing and measuring the differences. Those are the values that we are used to when we are learning something. When it comes to learning how to be present, or how to find ourselves, or how to wake up, whatever word we want to use, that learning process is useless. So most of the intellectual teaching, I think, is to convince the person that whatever way you have been learning so far, it was good, but to go in this direction, we're going towards real simplicity, and to value simplicity, also to value sameness. By sameness, I mean, again, rightfully so, in this dimension we emphasize the differences. So somebody can be taller or fatter or skinnier or faster. When we go in this direction and we learn towards this direction, the ultimate value is simple and sameness. And like I said, most of the actual teaching happens on a non-verbal being level. And this is where this protection comes in, the question what you started with, which is there is a very intimate process between a teacher and student, and part of that process is what I call the proxy, where I'm helping a student stay in being long enough, several times, hopefully, until the being recognizes itself. So that's part of that intimate process, but it's usually preceded by a long convincing of the validity of simpleness.
What were you saying? I'll let you use the word that I like to use. I don't hear people use it much. You use the word to value the simplicity. And you use the word sameness.
Right.
Value the sameness.
Yes.
Let's talk about, okay, that sameness. What do you, can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was a teenager or when I was a kid, it was when somebody was praising me, oh, you're stronger, oh, you're faster. The idea of my ego, the idea of the human ego or the human mind is to value difference. I am faster, I speak more languages, I have bigger muscles, I am more beautiful if you're a girl, I have a better figure. And so that's why, for instance, high schools came up with uniforms so that there wouldn't be so much difference between students, so that their attention would not go towards being different. So as the human mind values differences and actually thrives on it, because now I have an identity. If I'm taller than somebody, okay, now I have an identity. I'm a better boxer, now I have an identity. So that is valued, and the objective of staying in the present moment, quote unquote, is to use certain simple technology to slow down, where you and me actually feel the same. So that sameness has to be valuable. Even though the mind doesn't want to value it, somehow we must learn that it is valuable. After all, we have a common denominator, all living beings. We have a common denominator. We basically, deep inside, we're all the same. And we can call that love, unconditional love. Whatever we call it, it's going to be inaccurate.
The interesting, you were talking about you can value differences. You know, like you said when you were younger, you value your differences and, you know, all these qualities that a person has. And then it was suggested that you could value the sameness, even though the mind, it's a little tricky because the mind doesn't want to undo itself by valuing sameness. So the only way to value sameness perhaps is to make it an intellectual proposition. But still, a person seems to have a choice, but you can value the differences and how you're outstanding. And certainly we have to, getting through life, you have to do some of that. But then at some point you want to perhaps value the sameness. It seems like there's a choice there. And I know we get into discussion of free will. We don't really want to get into whether we have choice or not, but there appears to be a choice for some people at some point in their life. There's a fork in the road. Do I start valuing my differences, or I value the sameness? Is there that kind of choice at some point, or an apparent choice in a person's life?
It's a wonderful, deep question, because the human mind actually will never value that. The human mind might say, okay, I am now so superior that I am now valuing sameness, so I'm better than others. And so it might do that, and that's certainly not what we mean. The mind always learns what we learn intellectually and attempts to use it against us. But to answer your question, yes, it is possible. The only way I have seen it possible that a person actually experiences that oneness. And experiences that oneness not just for 5 seconds, for a little bit of a longer period, experiences his or her own being, our own being. Then that experience is now can be named by the mind, because the mind is going to do that. And because the mind now named it, now it could be compared on a mind level and says, okay, I value sameness. I value that sameness. So that way is possible. There's a huge problem with this, however, is that we now have a concept in our memory bank about something that is timeless. Something that is timeless, we have just polluted it with time. But knowing that, it's perfectly okay to have a memory that I had a timeless experience in which I was one with Jerry, with Susie, whoever. That oneness, that unconditional oneness. Hope I didn't make it even more complex, but
yeah. So I mean, it can be from what I'm hearing, it can be as kind of a mental strategy to say, well, I'm going to choose sameness, and that'll put me ahead in the spirituality game, the non-duality game. And yet, if there is that experience, the true experience of sameness, then the choice is it's more of a choiceless choice, perhaps. I mean, the valuing that happens of sameness in that case it's not a strategy. It's not like saying, well, today I'm going to value sameness. It's kind of more of a choiceless.
Right. Yes. The way what I do with students, I don't like to call them students, but let's call them that, is that once a student experiences this oneness, that simpleness, and have it at his or her memory bank as an experience, knowing that it is not polluted with time, what we do is I will attempt to not only have it as a memory, but have it as a bodily memory. Meaning that when that memory comes up, I will not experience it only as a memory concept, but I would experience it as a bodily feeling, as an embodiment. If that comes back, if not only the mental concept comes back, but the experience of a bodily feeling, the embodiment feeling, then I got the job. Then we got the job done.
Why?
Why? As soon as it's experienced as a bodily concept, as soon as I actually pay attention inside my body, or a student pays attention inside their body, the mind have a tendency to either slow down or stop. And that brings us to the concept which we have been learning for so many years, the kingdom of God is within, right? Everything is within, and everything is within. And basically, we learned that, but we left it at that. That was it. Okay, so now I know that it's there, so let's move on. What's the next concept, right? So, but there is actually a way to connect with the inner body on a feeling level. It's a very, very subtle feeling of connecting myself with, connecting to the inside of myself. And as soon as that is triggered, it also triggers that feeling, that sensation, that being inside the other person. The whole thing is so simple. That is why it's so difficult. I'm sure you heard that before.
Mm.
But that's why it's important to, in advance, to value simplicity, in advance to value subtlety, and those things that when this experience actually show up, then the experience, when it goes into the mind, it already goes into a component of the mind which are predetermined to value simplicity.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, interesting explanation of the value, to use that word again, of the embodiment.
Yeah.
So it's embodied. Now, when you talk about embodiment, can a person identify with a particular part of the body?
My experience is that it depends from person to person. The simplest thing is just to say, okay, Jerry, you're looking at me, but you're aware that your hand is there. That's usually the simplest. You don't have to look down, it's there. You know, you can feel that your hand is there. That's usually the simplest, but it's different. It differs for different people. My experience is that if a person is able to touch by paying attention to any part of the inner body, whether it's your nose, your ears, your mouth, your foot, your thighs, the mind starts to slow down. And it starts to slow down, we get to a stage where all of a sudden it's quiet. And we just stay there. And we don't have to do anything. And the longer we stay here not doing anything, we notice that the not doing will be valued. All of a sudden, this sensation, this feeling of being, this feeling of love deepens by itself. So any body part will do, depending on the person. Usually, if I work with a person and I start a sequence of feel your foot, feel your thighs, feel your, if I start from the bottom up, the next time I will do it in random. I will say, do your ears, do your shoulders. I mix it up so that the mind doesn't have the convenient possibility to make a system out of it.
Sounds like it's a bringing of awareness to wherever awareness is directed.
Yes. And what's wonderful is that it doesn't matter where it's, as long as it's connected to within. It's almost like if I want to use the word God or universe, whatever concept I want to use, if I just touch God just a little bit, which is within, if I come forth an inch, God comes forth a yard. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Something runs my body. That is not me. I couldn't run my body. My mind couldn't run my body for 5 seconds, right? So basically, we are connecting by paying attention inside. We're connecting to the universal power that runs our body. And it's very simple. So sometimes I say it's either going to be very easy for you or impossible to a person.
Something I wanted to get straight that you talked about. You talked about earlier about you can have a one moment experience of this sameness, this non-dual experience. And then you mentioned that it's not really very effective to keep that in the mind as a memory that you resort to. I mean, it might have might be some utility in calming you down in certain situations, or appreciating the effects of a nice memory, whatever that's worth. But then you said it has to be embodied.
Right.
So, and then you went on to describe how you can lead a person by taking awareness, by focusing awareness on any part of the body. But in that discussion, the embodiment of that memory kind of got lost, I think. And so, where does the embodiment of that memory play a role in that process of turning awareness to different body parts? Can you connect
Yes.
that?
Let's say I had this experience in the past sometimes. And usually my mind wants to call it something, the abracadabra meditation or whatever. And I said, okay, I want to get there. And if I stay with that conceptual memory, I will bring back the experience stained with time. However, if the memory has another component, which is okay, I am now valuing simpleness. I don't just want to remember this feeling. I want to remember this feeling in the inner body. And if my mind then lets me, enables me to be so simple that then I can actually pay attention to my body somewhere. Then I have used the memory bank correctly, and adjacent with the memory of what is the feeling of the embodiment, and the two now is united. So the staining of the time that was originally present is no longer present. As long as this stays as a concept, I call it the bone that is chewed up already. It's old, chewed up bone. as soon as it's embodied, the life is brought back into that memory. Now the duality concept actually becomes oneness, and time is no longer affecting it.
Yeah, and when time is no longer affecting it, then what?
If time is no longer affecting it, then then the person is in non-duality or oneness or present, whichever way we want to call it. Most of the concepts that we have been using so far have been stained or bastardized or whatever by explaining them too much. But if a person can come back here regularly, and come back here is a very wrong expression because I'm not going anywhere. What I have, by paying attention to the inner body, I uncovered what's already there, of course. And once it's uncovered and I'm capable of staying there because the being has taken roots, then this is the base from which now I can live my life. And I'm a very, very good proponent. Is there such an English word? Proponent. I'm very much for using it in everyday life, using them right now. So then now I can walk with this base. My mind is not running, talking to me. Because it took root within me. And the longer I stay there, the easier it is to actually keep it that way. So now I can drive my car, I can read a book, can have sex, I can go and eat, I can wash the dishes, whatever, from that base. And when we operate from that base, we call it magic, but it's not magic. That's normal, simple being. A normal, simple being as such would not have even any thought about harming somebody or creating a weapon or that there's not enough. It's the existence of the harshness of duality is not there as a base. However, the person does not lose their ability to function in the world. Say I frequently use the word engineer building a bridge. Not any example would do. I will not lose my ability to build a bridge or play tennis or even self-defense or even so it will not make me a wimp. This is the base upon which a totally new humanity can be built. And by new, I mean that the same kind of humanity as we used to have during the Golden Age, so-called Golden Age, except even a better, a more improved version of human than during the Golden Age. And I feel as people, we really have no choice. Either the universe is going to beat the hell out of us. I mean, it's happening all over the world. Or we learn the simplicity of being and start building life or lives and societies on this foundation. So that's how useful it is. And I feel that once this is uncovered and the being takes root inside a person, it must be practiced in everyday life right away. If not, it won't work. Now, the mind might say, okay, okay, I understand. You practice, you learn something, and you have to practice it. I mean it a lot more intensely than that. I mean that unless it becomes everyday use, now and now and now, and unless the everyday occurrences I handled from this perspective, the mind will take the power back. So practicing this is, I don't know what word to use, but I could say it's absolutely essential, but there must be a stronger word. It will not work without the practice, everyday practice of now. So something happens in my life, good. I embrace it from the perspective of this present loving power. Something bad happens, same thing. I'm being with it. So the everyday occurrences has to be part of this learning and practicing process. If not, it will not work.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, thanks for all that.
Most welcome.
You have an interesting past. I was just reading some notes. I don't even know but about what we're talking about, what we're, kind of rather stay what we're talking about,
Yes.
because this is the immediacy of what's happening. Again, staying on the topic of this sameness, I was looking at your blog at silentroargh.blogspot.com. Is that what it is? .blogspot.com? Or .wordpress, but is it?
I think so. I think it's WordPress.
Yeah, silentroargh.wordpress.com.
Right, right.
And also on Facebook, both places. You posted something about Native American spirituality.
Yes.
And
yes.
something I've always enjoyed about, I never really went to a sweat lodge, but I used to really do a lot of dry saunas, just in a gym, with the general public. Nothing spiritual about it, except that it is, because the intense heat and the sweating, and people just wrapped in a towel or whatever. I mean, brings you to a level of sameness. So I wonder if you can talk about your interest in Native American spirituality in general and why you're interested in it, and sweat lodges perhaps, and does it bring you to that place of sameness? Can you talk about some of that?
Yeah, of course. Well, might as well start with the sweat lodge. It's yes, during that experience in the sweat lodge, basically they heat up rocks and they bring it into his tent and they pour water over it in a tent, and we sit around, and sometimes the heat is unbearable, and we stay there for a long time. So it does bring us to the sameness in a sense that when a person is when something physical happens to us that's difficult to tolerate, intolerable almost, the mind don't know what to do with it. It stops. It goes, it stops. So now we're the same. Anybody who is in the tent is starting to bond. That's why people who are bonding under danger, or soldiers and people like that, really bond, and friendships become very deep, because we're bonding in sameness, we're bonding in simpleness. So yes, the sweat lodge does it. What I sometimes talk about regarding the sweat lodge is that during my visit with the Indians in Ecuador, one of the things we did was the sweat lodge. But he said that, the shaman said that the only way to get rid of pollution, white man's pollution, from the body is by sweating. And I kind of forgot about that, but recently I remembered. Also, I'm every second day I go to Bikram yoga. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's
hot yoga.
hot yoga, yeah. And because it's difficult to find sweat lodge on a regular basis in a city in United States, Canada, or Europe, anywhere. But I found hot yoga as the closest thing to it.
Yeah.
And the sweating is very healthy. It sweats out pollution that we don't even know what it is. So it's an extremely useful thing even for us Western people. And I feel that I feel lighter, I feel easier, my body feels fit. As far as experiences with the Native Americans, my my motivation to go there was started when I was a young man. I always wanted to meet Native Americans and had this sort of a romance attached to it, this mystery attached to it. All my life I've been looking for freedom. And first I thought that freedom means that I will have a lot of money, and I accomplished that. I had a lot of money. It did not bring me the kind of freedom that I was looking for. I had to get drunk every night just to be okay. I left this what I call civilization, and I stayed on the west coast of the United States. I went to a school called Ramtha School of Enlightenment, and I lived in the forest for 7 years. And it was really wonderful. I found another dimension to myself, but I still did not find the inner peace. At that time, I was in the business of gathering more and more and more concepts about spirituality from different teachers, with the hope that perhaps if I gather enough concepts, one day I'm going to get somewhere. And in that spirit, in that context, I went to visit the Indians. That okay, I learned all these things. I learned amazing things from Ramtha and other teachers. The reverse spinning, geometry of this and that and another, and the colors, and I really enjoyed that. But something in my heart pulled me to these simple people. I went to visit a friend in Ecuador, went to a business trip, and then his family owned a motel close to the jungle, close to the Amazon jungle, and he knew the shaman, and the shaman came to visit, and I was asking if I could stay with them. And I was very, very fortunate that somehow he liked me and says yes, even though he didn't speak English or Spanish. So the communication was non-verbal, which was probably, in retrospect, more accurate.
What did he speak? If he didn't speak, did he speak a native language then?
Yeah, he spoke his native language. They were a mixture of Quechua and some other type of Indian people. And they speak their native tongue, but in retrospect, I think I was fortunate that they couldn't communicate with words with me, because it had to be non-verbal, so it was actually seemed to be more accurate. So I was looking for gathering more and more spiritual concepts. I got up in the morning and I was waiting for a shaman to teach me something more and more. And to my great surprise, all the people who were there in the morning, they were just sitting there smiling and being. I was the only one who was waiting for something to happen.
Mm.
So me with all this spiritual knowledge and the best spiritual schools, I was waiting, and somehow I noticed that these simple people had something that I don't have. The first few weeks were extremely difficult because I was not used to the bugs, the heat, the humidity. So I was scratching and scratching and scratching, and I didn't really like the food very much, etc. So within a couple of weeks, like I lost at least 10, 15 pounds, and I cut all my hair because of lice and things like that. So my childhood romantic vision of Native Americans were gone by then. Because I experienced something extremely primitive on the existential level. That's what I needed to actually experience at the time. Time goes by, the shaman noticed my suffering, so he was kind enough to cook for me some tea called Ayahuasca. I did not know what that is at the time.
Well, I can tell you what it is if you don't know.
By now I know what it is.
Okay.
And so I was given ayahuasca twice a week for 3 weeks. And so you know about it. It really helped me. The first part of the experience is very difficult, as you know. And then after the ayahuasca was teaching me stuff on a non-verbal level. By that time I was able to, as a result of it, I was able to calm down, so I was able to get up in the morning and just sit instead of waiting for something to happen. So the main essence of what I have learned there is that in spite of all my knowledge, how come I don't know anything? Like I learned that whatever I'm learning, it's not in that direction. And I didn't really articulate it that way to myself at the time. But now I can say that. So I saw that simplicity is not in the concepts. Jerry, have you experienced ayahuasca?
No.
No.
This sounds like interesting here, your description with Ramtha and learning lots of interesting, spiritual concepts, and then taking that to the shaman.
Yes.
That simplicity, and then the contrast. You can see the contrast. It makes you see that even in the worlds of deep and wonderful spirituality, really are no different than driving down Main Street and seeing billboards for, Burger King and all those places, Walmart. So much can be distraction.
Yes.
And it's really hard to cut through it because a lot of it claims to be the truth, not distraction.
Yes. Exactly.
That comes clear in what you were just telling.
Yes. The very good news is that this type of simplicity is now much easier to teach than, say, 20 years ago.
Let me ask you a couple of things. First of all, I want to ask you why that's true, but I also want to ask you why you asked me if I ever tried ayahuasca. Just a matter of just conversationally asking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was just conversation because you mentioned that if I don't know, you'll tell me about it.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know. I just read about it. I don't know anything about it.
I thought that you may have experienced, which I don't recommend any kind of drugs to anybody, but that one, if someone has an opportunity, I would recommend it.
Yeah. Well, maybe in the right situation, like you had the shaman.
Exactly. In the right situation, under proper supervision, quote unquote.
Yeah.
A person can feel it in their heart, whether or not that's for them. And if they feel it in their heart, go for it. If no, then absolutely not.
Yeah, like I went to see Krishna Das last night, and it was I really didn't want to go, but I thought I should go because I'm in the spiritual community and I should hang out there.
Yeah.
And I didn't stay very long. I just left because I probably shouldn't have gone. It was nice to go. Nothing happened, but I think it does. You know, I think it's important to kind of follow your heart, so to speak.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope that's the most horrible thing that ever happens to me, going to see Krishna Das, you know.
So be
And
it.
I did enjoy him
That's wonderful.
for a little while. Anyway, so the other question was, why do you think it's getting simpler? You say things are getting simpler to communicate that simplicity.
It is most important. It is my personal experience, which is really what counts when you person has an opinion. Um, Even 10 years ago, I had a very difficult time just to tell somebody, okay, look into my eyes and feel your hand. That was a major challenge. Not for everyone, but for most people. Now it's much easier. I can actually convince somebody that to try it before you judge it or draw a conclusion. The logical explanation, I think, is that the magnetic field of the planet is changing. The electrical and magnetic field, the planet is slowing down, so the magnetic field is less and less intense. And the magnetic field influences human behavior and human openness. Coincidentally, I saw a presentation about for an indicator regarding trading the stock market. I don't want to spend much time on it, but that's how I make some money to pay my bills, is I do some trading of the market. And I saw a presentation on an indicator. And what the indicator was is that they, in a satellite, they were measuring the fluctuation of the Earth's magnetic field. Every minute it was measured. And that is put up on a screen. And every time there is a peak or a valley in the Earth's magnetic field, the people were either buying or selling. So that is absolute proof that magnetic field, moment to moment, influences human behavior. And as the magnetic field gets less and less intense, I think we become more and more open to something as simple as what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, in this conversation, I was into simplicity and enlightenment, and now I'm into money. So let's talk about the stock market.
Okay.
And where do you trade stocks? Is there a local exchange, or do you go to the New York exchange, or UK, or where do you what exchanges do you use? You're located in Hungary. Is it local, like Hungary?
No, I don't know anything about the European market. I trade the US markets, basically futures. I trade the S&P, the NASDAQ, and oil and gold, basically futures markets. And I use geometry for my decision-making process. And now I use the magnetic field fluctuations.
Wow.
I make.
What the heck are you doing?
And I make a little bit of money every day, just enough to live. And
now, it's known, anyone who gets into the stock market at all, for any period of time, you realize it's largely psychological.
yes.
You know, the emotions of fear and greed just play out, and that's what really I think is the cause of all the.
Yes.
Often, for a majority of the ups and downs in markets. I mean, and there are other reasons. I mean, there are fundamental reasons about companies. Companies,
Yes.
Could make a huge mistake or achieve a huge success, and prices can adjust accordingly. But a lot of it is just these emotions
Yes.
of the people.
Exactly.
And I know because I do a little bit of it, not a lot, but I can feel my emotions in a great way. If you want to see if you're enlightened, play the stock market. Watch what your emotions do. Watch your fear come in. Watch your greed come in. Yeah.
Exactly. If a person can stay totally present in the body while the market is going against you, then you're present.
It's a good test. And if you lose money and if you make money, if there's an equanimity about it, it's like,
That's right.
I mean, there is a difference. You're happier when you make, you're a little, but
Yes.
for the most part, the
Yeah.
bulk of that feeling is really
Right.
neither here nor there.
And if, by the way, I do think that the market and all this is the greatest BS in existence. But anyway, we're
It's a
trading
game. It's a game. So you agree to play the game.
we're trading human behavior, trading on human behavior. But I think the most important ingredient of trading success even is to be able to stay calm, really, and not play the game they want you to play. So they suck you into greed and they suck you into fear. And as long as, if you're not sucked in, you can actually think properly, use your technology, you can actually see the indicators clearly, not in a fuzzy way. You actually can follow your plan. If you're not in the present moment, you can't follow your plan because the mind just goes, oh my God, what's going to happen? What if this, what if that? And at any moment in time, you can see that the market could go up or the market could go down. You can justify it. So talking about the mind, So even a person's ability to make money depends on how well a person can stay in the moment. Of course, you've got to know how to trade, but being able to stay in the moment is a crucial ingredient.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just so much hype around financial markets. And again, you're pointing to simplicity. Cut out all the hype, all the crap, see what's there.
When push comes to shove, the market can go up, down, or sideways.
The market doesn't know what it's doing.
No.
But the nice thing, but there is some good teachings if you get into some of the writers in the markets. Can get pretty down to earth. They can say, look, you can't argue with the market. Like you can't argue with reality. The market has its own reality. Whatever a price is of a stock or whatever you're watching. I mean, that you can't argue with it. That's what it is.
Right.
I mean, you can go in your head. Well, it shouldn't have done this. If that happened, the price would be this. You can play in your mind, but the price is the price in that moment or at the end of that day. Can't argue with it. So if you can come from there, then
right.
Come here from clarity.
Well, when I'm talking to somebody and they are athletic kind of people, athletically inclined, what I recommend is they go take Aikido.
Aikido?
Aikido, a Japanese martial art where you 100% use the enemy's power to move and stay centered. And that is exactly what we need to do in trading, because the market is coming at me. Nothing I can do about it over there because it's coming. And when it's coming, I must respond appropriately, just like in Aikido. So
I think, and you have a black belt in one martial art, don't you?
Yes, I have a black belt in Hapkido.
Okay, I want to talk about that, but I'm still in the stock market. But you're integrating them, so it doesn't matter.
Yes.
People talk about timing the market, and a lot of people say you can't time the market, but you just said something that makes sense. You can respond to the market, and there's a difference there.
That's right. Absolutely.
I have an advisor. He says, you don't try to time the market. You can't time it. But okay, I guess you can't. You can't time it. You can't time it too much. You can't say, well.
Yes.
You can't time it, but you can respond to it.
There is the time is, of course, one of the important ingredients. There's a software that I have that I do recommend to people that concerning timing. It's called backtothefuturetrading.com. Back to the Future Trading. And they have a software that you turn on, and it goes back 2-3 months and creates statistical information as to when the large traders are actually trading, and project it forward for you. So you know 1 week in advance, statistically, when these large traders are actually trading and which way they are trading it, short or long. The fact that they're gonna trade is like 80% accurate, and the direction is about 60% accurate. So you must use other means of entry, but that helps with timing a lot. Like I get up in the morning and say, okay, today is Wednesday, let's see, I want to trade from 4 to 5. So statistically, that's when the large traders will be trading, because they have habits, and we use their habits to trade with them.
So it sounds like if you use that tool and other tools, you can push the odds in your favor.
Yes.
As much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. You push the odds to your favor every time you enter properly, and then you have to manage it. Like money management is the key. I like scaling in. You know what that is? Scaling in.
Sounds like investing a little at a time.
Yeah, it's like if the market goes against me, there's another point where I, instead of getting stopped out, I come in with one more contract, so it averages out my entry, and so that seemed to work really well for me. Must be careful with it because obvious reasons. You can't do it forever. So something goes against you, instead of being stopped out, you add one more. And the other thing I can actually say is that take a look at where you want to enter, right? Based on whatever decision making you use, and take a look at where you want to put your stop, and put your entry where you wanted to put your stop.
Well, you must. I mean, I don't identify a lot with that because I don't do futures or anything. I just and I don't do a lot of it, but I'm just more basic. Whatever I do,
yes,
surround with. But that's something else you could probably consult. You could probably be a trading consultant.
Yeah, it is. If I take 100 people, 95 would be interested in my trading teachings rather than how to be present.
Yeah, probably. And yet, I've read a fair amount of financial and investing stuff, and some of it definitely gets into some of the more value of being in at least a meditative state of mind.
Yes.
Maybe not a completely non-dual, but at least removing the distractions and finding a kind of center.
Right. Yeah, that's being between money management and being able to stay centered. You basically got it made.
Yeah.
Not much else is needed, really. Basics, But again, simplicity makes the money.
Let's talk about simplicity and ease. I mean, in being easy. I mean, it's one thing. Some things they say, well, it's simple, but it's not easy. Or, I think that you find life itself. Just talking about life, that life, if it's kept simple, then life's easy. Or even doing this hard stuff, this financial, playing futures and stuff. It's not simple, but or maybe you say it is. But this whole idea of things being simple and not easy, or things being simple and easy. You have anything to say about that, Gabor?
Yeah. When we say those cliches that simple is better, or life should be easy or simple, and I could go on and simplify my life, right? I could buy a simpler house, a simpler car, or maybe take the subway or something, and I can simplify. And to some extent that will help. But the kind of simplicity that actually helps is to slow the mind down. Because simplicity in the context of the mind is still mind. So the mind is going to say, okay, so now I'm simple. Isn't it nice? I should feel much better. But how come I don't feel that much better? So by simplicity, if we have this inner silent simplicity, that is the simplicity that we're looking for. And my outside world could be doesn't matter how complex my outside world is. I could have real estate all over the world, or do futures and options, and my outer life could be as complex as I want, as long as my inner self is peaceful. That's really what dominates. Now, chances are, if I'm really simple inside, by being quiet inside, that I don't really want 10 different condominiums all over the world and 3 different cruisers. I don't really care. So chances are that my outer world will reflect my inner simplicity eventually. But hypothetically, what dominates is the inner peace. Outside could be a hurricane, but inside, if my mind is slowed down, then it's okay. There is a difference.
Yeah, I think that's true. You can have this inner simplicity, and outwardly your life can be complex. You can have all kinds of businesses that can look complex. And I think there's this whole movement called simplification.
Yes.
Where people go out and have garage sales and sell everything they have, and the sense is that if you do this, you'll be more at peace. But I don't know if there's necessarily any relationship between, simplifying your life outwardly and experiencing that inward simplicity.
Initially, let's say your life is complex and you're simplifying your life. Initially, it feels very good, simply because the mind has to deal with so many, a lot less things. So initially, it feels good, and then, so there is a relationship. But eventually the mind kicks in, and it's amazing it's amazing what the mind can do with conceptual simplicity. I could be sitting in front of a simple river in a cabin, and my life is simplified, but my mind could be talking to me. The very best is to have an actual simple, good, healthy life, whatever you want, and have this inner peace. And we can have this inner peace in a lakefront, or in a penthouse party, or in the middle of a busy market, and the peace is the same.
I think that's a big key message, a good way to bring our interview to a conclusion. I forgot something, and I was remiss to do. And just hang in there a second. I'm just going to get up for a second. I forgot.
Jerry put on his shirt.
I forgot the check shirt.
It is the same.
My glasses up here so I can see what I'm. I forgot that we're in the blue check shirt.
That's right.
And you probably were highly insulted that I was not wearing my
totally.
shirt.
My feelings were hurt. I mean, after all, we go to the same tailor.
It's a good tailor.
They don't accept me in the club.
And here's your read. It's a nice shirt, yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, it is.
I think we're both.
Perhaps if we talk next time, we can word the same.
No, we're in the club, we're in the organization, we're trading the same stocks, we're both whatever. But anyway.
Lots of similarity.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you very much. I mean, you have a lot of interesting things in your past, escaping communism. We didn't get into a lot of excitement in your life because we were just kind of nailed right down to basic teaching, which is very interesting.
Yeah, you started the question with the most intimate question there is, which is great.
Start with the last question. Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's why nobody, I mean, who knows what's going on. I don't really necessarily go chronologically in these interviews. I just try to go with what interests me. Maybe I should build them up more and be more.
I think it's the perfect way to interview someone because there's no, if they have any expectation, it's ruined immediately.
Oh, good.
You get a better interview.
Gabor Harsanyi, your website, again, is silentroargh.wordpress.com. And you'll talk to people like on Skype like this and get into their very intimate with people.
Yes.
People can see that. What I do. Get a sense of you and how you function and relate to them. Yeah. Thank you very, very much.
I also thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I actually never had anyone asking these kind of a deep questions. So
yeah,
absolutely not. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't like to play around too much with questions. I want to get right to the point and see what people say.
Right on.
So thank you.
Thank you.
For her. Thank you. So I think I'll end the interview right around there. I have to do some editing in the beginning. Thank you for your patience in the beginning.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Hopefully this recorded okay. We got more than enough time, and I'll do some editing on this.
See what happens.
Doing another interview later today with someone, and so it'll give me a lot of editing to do. And but I enjoyed just spending some time with you.
Likewise, Jerry.
That's the main thing. I enjoyed that stuff with your experience with the shamans. That was great.
Thank you. All the best to you, Jerry.
Okay. Thank you, Gabor. So long to Norit.
I will.
I'll be following you guys on Facebook and wherever I can find you. Okay, I'll let you know. Bye, Norit. I'll let you know when this is. I'm going to try to edit it today. Next couple of days, I'll give you a link. Put it on YouTube.
That would be great.
Okay. Take care, both of you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.